Okay, today we are going to be doing aggregate demand. So, aggregate demand, we talked about this already. The slide is not new. That's total demand, right? Demand for all goods and services in a country. So, aggregate demand is really a measure of GDP. So, we're going to take a look, even though this slide's old, so we're not going to focus on it. We're going to take a look at the aggregate demand curve to see how this slide translates to this graph right here. So we're measuring price level, okay? If you put price on macro, your graph is going to be wrong. Micro is price, macro is price level. Price level implies inflation, overall price levels in the economy. And we're not just measuring quantity, right? Because we're measuring everything. So we're going to be measuring real GDP or real output. Output is GDP. So aggregate demand is demand for everything, right? Consumers, businesses, government, and net exports or exports minus imports. So using what you know, and always label it AD. You don't have to do equals sig xn. Um, this means net exports. You don't have to put all of this here. AD is enough for a label. So think back to supply and demand. What definitely doesn't shift the curve? Think about what didn't shift the curve in micro, right? Price didn't shift the curve in micro, so price level does not shift the curve here for the same reason, right? We're already measuring price on the graph. There's no reason to actually shift the curve. Change in price level is just a movement on the same exact curve. Okay. So that curve, the AD curve is downward sloping. There's three reasons why that you want to know. First, the wealth effect. So if we have higher prices, you're going to feel poor, right? Your income might not change. You're not getting paid more or less at work, but if price levels rise, you'll have less purchasing power and then you'll buy less. Opposite's going to be true for lower price levels, right? If price levels decrease, you don't have to get a raise at work, but you'll feel richer and you'll buy more because your money has more purchasing power, right? Okay. So that's one reason why it's downward sloping. Because as price levels go down and down and down, you can buy more and more and more, right? Lower price level means greater output out here on the graph. Okay, so that's the first reason. Second reason after the wealth effect is the interest rate effect. So interest rate effect, when price level goes up, think about what's happening, right? When we said we have inflation, we said lenders are hurt. So they have to increase their interest rates to make up for the value of money changing. So they're going to charge a higher interest rate to make up for the rising price levels. And if they have a higher interest rate, that means you're not going to borrow as much, right? If money is more expensive for you to borrow because you have to pay back more in interest, you're going to borrow less, and therefore you're going to have less to spend, right? This is especially affects business spending. You're going to have less to spend. So, for example, interest rate goes up from 5 to 25% because inflationary fears are causing lenders to increase rates. You're not going to open up a new store, right? If you're a business owner, you're not going to take out a loan and open up a new chain because you're afraid of the interest being too expensive. That's going to shift aggregate demand. Excuse me, that's a price level change, right? That's a price level change that ends up affecting aggregate demand. It's not a shift, it's still a movement because at the end of the day, right, it's still a price level change, right? Price levels change cause the interest rate effect to actually occur, but it's all, at the end of the day, still based off of price levels. Okay. And then our final reason that aggregate demand is downward sloping is something called the foreign trade effect. So the foreign trade effect, if our price level rises, we're sticking with the rising example, other countries won't buy as many of our stuff, right? They're not going to buy as much of our goods either. So we're not going to be able to sell as much, and therefore real GDP is going to fall. So this is still related to that graph, right? Still a price level change, right? Price levels went up, but when price levels went up, think about the original graph again. When price levels went up, we still have this downward sloping curve, right? Price levels go up. Not only do we buy less, but foreign countries buy less from us. Um, so same idea applies. Okay. Now let's talk about the shifters here. So the shifters of AD are going to be really any change in sig XM. So if we have an increase in spending, let's say the government spends more. Let's say the government is building a wall. That's going to be an increase in government spending. That's a shift of AD to the right. If the government says we're going to cut the Department of Education and no more federally funded education, that's going to be a shift of AD to the left, right? Really simple. You just need to be able to identify in multiple choice form what the shifters are and what's actually happening based off of certain scenarios. That's where the challenge comes into play. So let's look at a few of those to end the video. So consumer spending is the first one, right? You might see some examples like consumers have more disposable income, right? Disposable income means money that you have left over after you pay all of your expenses, right? People have more money. That's going to shift AD. Which way? Yeah, to the right. Consumer expectation. So, how people feel about the economy affects their spending. If you're afraid you're going to lose your job because you think the economy's bad, you're going to spend less. That'll be AD shift to the left. If we have a lot of consumer debt, a lot of your money is going to be used to pay off your current debt, and you're not going to be buying anything new, so that would be AD shift to the left. Taxes. So think about taxes. Taxes means when you're taxed, that means you have less money. If you have less money, you have less to spend. That would be a decrease, right? That would be an AD shift to the left. If taxes go down, you have more disposable income, so that'll be an AD shift to the right. See, this is what we mean. You have to know how to interpret each of the different scenarios because the shifters itself is just, more spending or less spending. You just have to know all these different scenarios here and think about it logically. Interest rate, we talked about that. Businesses care about investment spending. If interest rates go up, it's more expensive to borrow money, so I'm going to borrow less, therefore spend less, therefore AD shifts to the left. Opposite's going to be true for interest rate decrease. Business expectations, same exact concept as consumer expectations, right? Same exact thing, no difference. Productivity and technology, right? If these new robots come out, businesses are going to want to buy them so they can produce more quicker, cheaper, more efficiently. That'll be AD shift to the right. And business taxes, same exact idea as taxes on consumers, right? If businesses are taxed more, they're going to have less disposable income and therefore spend less, therefore AD shift to the left. Let's look at our last two, government and net exports. So government expenditures. This is what we said before. If we decrease defense spending, that's going to be AD shift to the left, right? Less spending overall, assuming all else stays the same. If we increase public works programs, we build a new playground, or we increase Medicare, that's going to be more government spending needed to do that. So that would be an AD shift to the right. And then finally, change in net exports. So like if we have if our dollar depreciates, and we'll talk more about foreign exchange later, if our dollar is worth less, um, so weak dollar, strong dollar, if it's good or bad, tends to depend on the current economy and depends on what angle we're looking at it. But generally, if our dollar depreciates, that means the Europeans are going to buy more, right? So our exports are going to increase. But this is something that we're going to really get into a lot more later. What you'll see more often in this unit is the health or the income of other countries. So, for example, if Brazil has a recession, then that's going to be less money they have to spend, and therefore our AD will shift to the left, right? Because they're going to buy less of our own goods. Up here, the Europeans were buying more of our own goods because their currency was stronger. It's easier for them to buy our stuff. Um, think about the health of our economy, right? If we have a recession, this is under change in net exports because we buy less from other countries, right? So we purchase less imports. So make sure we'll do more practice with the examples. That'll be our main focus. and we'll look at that pretty soon.